Hello world, here we are again with a brand new list, top 10
That's
slash
Jason, I'm back
top
at.
5. I was gonna get to that. I'm Jason, that's Becca. And our top 10 list today is
Killer Animals.
killer animal movies,
Yeah.
which is a personal favorite of mine.
Right, it's like ripped from the headlines. We were trying to think of something relevant, and there are a lot of good animals gone bad stories in the news lately. Like
Always.
always, yes.
Always seems to be crazy
Especially
animals.
in Florida,
Yep.
in Arizona. But yeah, so we're doing this.
So here we are. It's kind of one of my favorite film genres. It's one that I remember quite a bit.
My number 5 is a classic from James Nguyen. Birdemic. Yes, it is a good bad movie.
It's the worst movie of all time.
The funny thing is, though, he really was all into it. Like, he was...
Was he kind of like the Troll 2 guy? Like, really thought it was going to be something?
Well, he actually, like, believes in the whole, like, environmental statement it tries to make.
Sure.
Which, that's fair. Yeah. They go to see An Inconvenient Truth. There's stuff in there you can tell he's well-intentioned, and that's part of what makes it charming, because...
It's really bad.
There are no birds. There are birds superimposed, and there are coat hangers.
The birds fly very slowly,
And
hover very slowly.
not quite correctly. Yeah, they use wire hangers to beat them, but still, yeah. Like, okay, pretend like the birds are up there, but then like, okay, they do whatever they do, but then
I'm doing it for you. You superimpose birds.
Right,
That was probably better than what we just did.
But still, it's charming. I love it. Whatever.
If you like bad movies, then it's definitely
right. If you like bad movies,
something you
this is
should
a bad
watch.
movie you have to
And
watch.
we like bad movies, so of course we both have watched it.
And actually, Birdemic too.
And yeah,
I
then
like that.
it became so popular and so talked about, the first one, that they in fact made a second one.
But it was almost like the Sharknado thing. Like, I mean, Sharknado came out of the gate being self-referential and being aware. Like sci-fi had made so many of these movies that were like just ridiculed for being crazy, and then Sharknado came out. This like Sharknado 2 came out, and it's like, no, you've lost your charm altogether. Same thing a little bit with
I like all the Sharknado movies.
I like them, but yeah, same kind of thing with Birdnado. Birdemic 2.
You heard it here first.
Birdnado. Hey, yeah. But it kind of lost its charm because they made a sequel because the first one was so bad. It's like Neil Breen's movies now. They're just like, they're not cool anymore because he knows to make them bad.
Right. Instead of trying to make a serious...
A good movie and everybody yeah.
My number 5 is an Australian movie called Razorback, which I always thought was extremely good, extremely well shot. Definitely not a Birdemic. The effects were all solid, pretty gruesome at times. But the Razorback itself everything was just shot so well, like so very, like we just saw the house being pulled apart, things like that.
Yeah, it's a terrifying creature, and it doesn't
looks really good.
Yeah, it doesn't look like cartoonish or anything.
No, it doesn't even look like a puppet, really.
Yeah, it looks very, I guess, realistic. I don't know. I've never run into a boar.
Razorbacks, they're pretty frightening on their own.
I would think,
and they do hunt them quite a bit in Australia because they apparently are kind of like deer in the sense, and that happens here too. That the boar become
listen to us
so overpopulated,
like we know.
Like Razorback is a fun movie. I love these types of movies. I love overgrown, and you'll see that in my list as we continue to go. Overgrown, like killer animals.
It's kind of the way it has to go. It's always the humans fuck around, and the animals somehow
it's very overgrown, or just a lot
mutant,
of them.
or so many of them.
Yeah.
So I'll give a little shout out to the movie Boar,
Yay!
right?
You're supposed to do that for shout outs? Yay!
Okay, well, you can do that. I won't.
That was very white of me.
Very,
Yay!
very white of you. But no, I watched the movie Boar, which is on Netflix, I believe. Pretty good movie. Same kind of thing, but a little updated. And the boar in that is so not realistic looking.
Definitely not like Razorback.
But yeah, it does not look like it's a real boar, but
It's a fun movie.
It's fun, and that's what we're here for.
Absolutely, that's absolutely what we're here for.
All right, I gotta look at my list, but number 4 on my list.
What is it?
It's Grizzly.
Oh.
Jaws with claws.
From my hometown director, William Girdler.
So
Louisville, Kentucky is my hometown, just in case you didn't know.
We've been kind of like throwing around an idea of doing some kind of convention thing. We decided if we do that, this guy is going to get like our first like lifetime achievement award. Okay, so he directed 3 on a Meat Hook, which
Three on a Meat Hook.
He directed Abby. If you've not seen that, it was like
kind of an Exorcist style.
Yes, it was like a cash grab, blaxploitation Exorcist, but it was actually really, really good.
He did a Pam Grier Sheba, Queen Sheba.
Yeah, and he died when he was 30, scoping out his like 10th movie in Peru in a helicopter crash.
Manila, right? It was his 10th movie. They were doing a location scout, and his helicopter went down. He also did the Manitou
and The Day of the Animals, which is a movie
which was after Grizzly.
Which would have been on this list. We watched the trailer and we were very intrigued by the whole thing, but we had not seen the movie, so we are going to have to watch Day of the Animals.
Yes. Yeah, especially from him directing, because it was a smart idea. You take Jaws, you put it on land. What's a very frightening animal on land that's fairly common? A bear. And there you go. And they did well. It actually is a pretty it's very 70s. But it is a decent movie.
But even for today, the scene where the woman is like cooking or something in the kitchen, and her little kid's out playing in the yard. Yeah, and like the bear comes up to get him. I mean, that's really terrifying.
Oh yeah,
he basically just mauls both of them.
Yeah, which happened in Jaws. They killed children in Jaws.
Okay, but this is Jaws with claws.
Jaws with claws.
And there's a bazooka at the end of this fucking movie. And if you are fans of Triple B Theater, you will know we have already talked about.
We're Triple B Theater.
Yeah.
Boobs.
Blood. We already talked about Grizzly 2, which was filmed almost completely. Had George Clooney, Deborah Foreman. The largest gathering in Budapest since the revolution, the Hungarian Revolution.
It was the Grizzly 2 concert?
Yes. And the movie basically didn't get finished because they didn't have the money. The Hungarian government got pissed, seized all of their equipment. So it's really lacking. It's lacking a lot of editing, clearly, and post-production. But as far as the movie goes itself, it's maybe lacking like the last 5 minutes. You can find it on YouTube.
It's something.
It's something. It is something, guys.
So my number 4 is a movie called Ticks. Seth Green, Alfonso Ribeira, Clint Howard.
Nicole Eggert.
Yeah,
Don't forget her.
It's very giant. Ticks in general are frightening anyways.
Yes.
Just these little blood-sucking little things that cause disease, and now in Ticks, the movie, you get giant blood-sucking ticks, and they kill a dog in the movie, and I hate that. Everybody hates that. Everybody hates when they kill an animal, but they killed the dog.
But so if you have dogs and you live in kind of wooded areas like this, as I'm like combing through my hair, it's very common for them to have a tick. And they're tiny. They start out tiny, and even in this movie, they start out tiny. And it's
they pick one off the dog,
basically, like you're supposed to burn it off, or put oil to like suffocate it because it puts its head. It gets its head inside of you.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, they've made a new tool now that you can go under. It's like a little tool that goes underneath the tick and kind of right by its like fangs and head, and then it's a twist. You twist it, and it makes it.
So basically, you just bore out like
it makes it
hunk of skin.
It makes it let go. The tick lets go. So
or
science
or a match or oil. There you go.
Yeah, burn yourself while you're getting ticks off of you. I've never used a match, and I've always been able to get a tick off of me.
just pull them off my dogs. None of them have ever gotten Lyme disease, but if they
you know
stay on there...
Dogs can't talk.
I have Lyme disease, Becca.
I don't feel good.
Oh my god. So, but they start getting bigger and bigger. And I mean, I've seen ticks like this big, like on a dog.
Oh,
I mean, they get engorged with blood.
I've definitely pulled some very giant
huge
ticks, and it's so gross.
Yes, but in this movie, they go way above and beyond.
Clint Howard gets like all in his face, and there's like boars inside him. Lots of gooey.
He gets more than Lyme disease.
Gory special effects for old Clint Howard. There's a lot of like good, fun, gooey stuff, and then there's like always the very, very giant tick. You've got the climactic end scene. I've always loved that movie. I just love stuff like that. It's just because it's so stupid, and I just love old practical 80s effects, 90s effects.
That was the 90s, yeah.
Things like that. Like, then Ticks is definitely number 4 on my list.
Yeah, being Midwestern, I really feel like that's something that could happen.
You could remake that right now, and still people would be like, it would freak them out.
Yes. I mean, like Arachnophobia, which is one of the ones that didn't end up on our list, but yeah.
Because we're probably going to put that on a different list later.
We will.
Like insects and things.
All right, so I have to look at my list because I can't memorize 5 things. No. Shut up. Because I had to do an audition lines with him like 20 times, and I still had to read the lines from my phone every time.
But I might have gotten the role. I don't know yet.
We don't know.
We shall see.
Is he charming? Is he awkward? We don't know.
Desperate. Please cast me.
Richard, I don't ever want to see you again.
Mm-hmm.
God. Anyway, makes sense for nobody but us. So my next one is Eaten Alive, which when Crawl came out, I said on my In the Mike of Madness podcast, we were going to do Crawl. We needed a companion movie. I said, it's got to be Eaten Alive. It's like my go-to, like...
Toby Hooper.
Right, Toby Hooper, Croc Gator, whatever.
And we watched, we sat down and watched it on the set of Kill Giggles when we were
right, because he was supposed to be
downtime
on the podcast with us, but he had to work. Whatevs.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm a busy boy. But Eaten Alive is
it's something. Again, like most of these movies, it's something. So you have a lot of veteran actors in this. It's crazy. I mean, this is obviously the twilight of most of their careers. We have Morticia Addams, right?
As the
Carolyn Jones, but yeah,
old bordello
Miss Hattie,
pimp.
Miss Hattie.
No, they put her in like old person makeup. I was very confused.
Very weird, like very like.
It's very John Dugan grandpa-ish.
Right, it's like they were like, here's a mask from Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Just tighten it up a little bit and make it fit her. Whatever.
The lead, what was his
name? Neville Brand. So if you look him up,
went for it.
Yes, and if you look him up, he was big in the 40s and 50s. Did like tour, a lot of like war movies.
Well, and he was a legit.
He was a legitimate
war
actor.
Hero,
and this is clearly the end of his career. But he was great.
He was
in
so
it. He was
like
great.
I was kind of blown away by his performance in this because I've not watched that movie in many years until we watched it, and just watching him perform and knowing that sometimes he's just talking to himself, like there's nobody in the scene, and he has to carry an entire scene with just him, and
he flips from like...
He pulled me in quite a bit. I just really loved watching him.
Yeah, he flips from like being like likable to being like crazy to being like questionable. I mean, he
creepy,
runs the
gross.
Gambit. And so I know you don't listen to the podcast, but I did give you props for that. But
you have a podcast?
Yeah, I have a podcast. It's called In the Mike of Madness. You were supposed to be on that.
I might listen to it one day.
Yeah, you might. But whatever, I give you props.
But I love Eaten Alive. I thought I was really impressed with the...
It's think?
Oh, it's not necessarily a good movie at all, but I definitely loved his performance. That's what like really.
Well, and we had little Lindsay Wallace.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, and if you listen to, and Robert England is Buck, who's raring to fuck, very
Robert
young.
Englund.
And we have a lot of mosquitoes out here right now. But yes, so
That's a movie we didn't put in here. Mosquito.
Oh God. Okay.
They're killing us right now.
They are. They're
We'll do an
We're
insect one
ticks
later.
and mosquitoes right now.
Mhm.
We're gonna die later tonight. It was nice knowing you guys.
We will have effectively been eaten alive.
Aw. Anyway. So on said podcast that you were not on,
Mhm.
we got into a weird rabbit hole where we were talking about how Buck
And that'll
was,
lead into my next one.
Buck was so horny. But like when it came down to it, when
He kind of became
Angie,
heroic.
Right, he tried to become heroic, and we were like, we made this correlation that maybe Buck wanted to ass rape little Lindsay Wallace. And we were
That's
like,
not heroic.
we are the first podcast ever to have talked about Robert England, Freddy Krueger ass raping Lindsay Wallace in a movie.
Congratulations.
Yes. And you weren't there.
Well,
Rabbit hole.
yes. So my number 3 is a movie called Night of the Leafless. Some people say Leafless. It's
That's
Leafless.
what I would have said, but
It's a giant killer rabbits.
bunnies.
Giant killer carnivorous rabbits. From a book called Attack of the Rabbit or A Year of the Rabbit or something like that. And this was it Roy Calhoun, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And Janet Leigh. And
Yes.
it's
Yeah.
so things like that, like
Very typical of those movies at
Yeah.
that time.
things like
their names.
Night of the Leafless and my next 2 films. They are the things that I remember watching at a very young age and just kind of being enthralled with, and that all led me to the path that I'm on now. But I never knew it then. But these are movies that stuck with me, and they're not good movies per se. I mean, it's giant killer rabbits. It's not a masterpiece by any means, but it was just such a fun, silly movie that I just always remembered from, because it was made a year before I was born.
The year I was born.
And
Because I'm older than he is.
But I love it. It's just, do you remember it very much?
I don't remember a lot of it, but I do remember it. And that was the thing. We started just searching for killer animal movies. But we eventually ended up in like 1970s killer animal movies. Because it's like the wheelhouse right there. Like 76 to 79, man. That was
Quite a
like...
few.
Yes, there were tons of them. And those are the ones that were on TV for us. They were kind of tame.
Yeah, there's a lot of even just made-for-TV kind of movies.
Yeah, and it was always like, take the name of the animal. Then it's either singular or plural. So it's like bug or bugs, like just, and then you just put in a few like people who are big names, but they're on the way out of their careers, like Janet Leigh.
Janet Leigh, definitely. Well, Rory, he had
No,
not
he
done
had
Motel
not
Hell yet,
done Motel Hell. That's, yeah.
because that was 81?
Maybe. We'll cut that out because we look like we're.
I think it was
idiots.
81.
We
You don't have to cut it out.
Yeah.
I know my stuff.
I'm saying 82, but anyway, what are we gonna bet? What are we gonna bet? What's on the line? I even think it's later than that. I want to say 84, but okay.
That's my bet.
Okay, didn't catch that, but you need to
I
get.
was looking at your boobs.
Oh.
Or we could bet, if I'm right, I get to be the version of Buck that you had mentioned, and you get to be little
Lindsay Wallace with a leg brace.
Put on a leg brace. I'm into it.
Yeah, that's his thing, man.
Right in the butthole.
He's kinky. Butthole, leg brace. All about it. We're going to have fun tonight, kids. All right. Oh, my God.
Your number 2.
Okay, my number 2 is
a fun one.
Is another... oh, God, did we look this up? I think it's New Zealand.
It's New Zealand.
It's New Zealand. We didn't want to offend anybody, so we tried to look up all the ones that seem like they came from Kiwi land. New Zealand black sheep. So we have like a farm, like a science type farm. I don't know what you call it, like a research facility or whatever.
The trailer's a lot of fun for this movie.
Well, the movie is a lot of fun too. And it's very comical because it's sheep. Adorable fucking sheep. I mean, like even like Night of the Lepus, like they make the bunnies seem sinister.
They
But
just put a
like,
little fake blood on their mouth. And...
right? It's like, ooh, they've been eating somebody. But no, and this one, it's like they just show like these very docile animals you could just like bring into your house. You know, they'd probably be better pets than your dog, and they go a little fucking crazy.
It's a fun movie. There's a lot of good, puppet work.
Yeah.
With those, a lot.
No, it wasn't puppets. Those were real sheep.
Oh, just
they
very well
trained them to be
man-eating
psychotic.
sheep. Yeah, a lot of. It's just like the humor in it is like just in the trailer alone. If you just watch the trailer alone, you get all the type of humor that you know you're in for the movie. And it's,
right, for a more modern.
I remember when this movie came out, and I was like, "What is this?" And I loved it.
It was one of those Dimension Extreme movies at Blockbuster, by the way.
And I remember,
not Blockbuster exclusive, because that's.
Yeah, it's a fun movie. I enjoy that one. I think that's a good pick.
I think it is too, because I picked it. Everybody. How about you? What?
My number 2 is one of my favorite movies that I have to watch every October. Squirm. And it's I think that was also made in 1976. And
when old people were born.
Oh yes. And it is killer worms. It is a lot of killer worms, and they try to say that it's based on a true story, or at least on truth, which is apparently when electricity hits the ground, it forces worms up. And in the case of Squirm, there's a storm, knocked down the electrical lines in a small town. They hit the ground, and just herds of, would you say herds? Is a bunch of worms a herd? A herd of worms? It is now. Just rise from the ground, and they scream, and they have fangs.
Yeah.
And it's
the most like stereotypically like stupid Southern town, like the
yeah.
girl like wears like red and white.
And they talk like this.
Yeah.
And they're not really
smart.
smart.
That's right. Well, and she's gonna get out. She's gonna get in the big city. Yeah, she's gonna get out of this town if she can fight all the fucking worms.
Yeah, and it's just there's so many worms. Squirm has a lot of really, really fun scenes of. So you got the classic, which is also happens in our award of the day.
Yes.
But it has the classic worms coming out of the faucet, out of the shower.
Yes. Which
shower
isn't that,
head.
when you think worms, like, I mean, they're kind of gross, but like, I mean, if you see one in your yard, you're like, oh, it's a worm,
yeah, it's
a worm. But not in this case. Okay.
So there's a man who is he's real big, but he's real dumb. And he's in love with like the lead actress, but she likes the new guy in the town. And he gets
women, am I right?
He gets infected by the worms, and they're like crawling in his face, and he just kind of becomes kind of a zombie worm type
Which
person.
That's where it kind of gets a little
great.
Yeah.
And he's swimming on top of like there's so many worms in like the house that it's like waist deep of worms.
Yes,
and he's like swimming through them like some kind of worm shark. It's pretty incredible, and you should watch it. So the Triple B trifecta winner of this episode is Slug.
I bought this thinking it was Squirm, or thinking of Squirm. And
that makes sense because there's a lot of
there are a lot of similarities.
Similarities for sure.
This is like bad, like Italian,
snails with teeth.
Right. It's really bad. But yeah, it does have the boobs and the boobs. We had trouble finding a killer animal movie that had boobs.
Like it had like gratuitous
Right.
nudity,
Yeah.
and blood, and this has a lot of gore in it.
Yes.
For a killer snail movie,
Yeah.
it's gory.
And it takes itself really seriously,
Yeah.
and
Which
I
I think
actually
makes it
am kind
better.
of like on board.
Yeah, I think it makes it much better.
Yeah.
It's very gory. They get inside people, and then it's just like it's gross.
Right. You know, and you've got your like the guy who's in charge of the fucking septic system of the city or whatever, who has to go down there and.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good one.
You don't want to be a civil servant.
It's so good. It's the triple B trifecta winner. Boobs, blues, blues?
Blues.
Boobs, booze, and blood. Slugs.
So my number one is not because I love the movie, but it's because every time this movie is brought up, I have to hashtag justice for Ella. Monkey shines. Motherfucking Ella the monkey, she did nothing wrong. She
did what was asked of her.
Right. She was fucked with, by the humans and whatever the fuck they were injecting her with.
Which is usually how it goes. That's
And
the story.
she was supposed to be loyal and and subservient to that guy, and that's what she was.
Planet of the Apes remake before there was a Planet of the Apes
And
remake.
I'm telling you, that has to be the thing that that little doll was creepy before, but the.
I remember Monkey Shine is kind of terrifying me when I was younger.
Yeah.
I was kind of frightened by it. Yeah.
We just talked to Michael Rasso, and he was on the set of Monkey Shine.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a good one.
And we only just found out it was directed by George Romero. Yeah.
Oh, duck! I don't know what the hell that was. Yeah. So Romero movie. It's good. It's not talked about as much as
because Ella is the true hero of that fucking movie. The humans suck in that movie. I'm sorry, they all suck.
It's usually the case.
Ass. Yes, it is usually the case, but that's what makes that my number one. Mm-hmm. Ella, love you, Ella.
Yay.
Being real wide again there.
Still shouldn't do it. Mm-hmm. So my number one is twofold. So it's part one and part two.
He's a cheater.
Part two is actually my favorite, but part one is called Food of the Gods. The Food of the Gods, which is basically a giant killer. There's giant killer chickens.
A little bit of everything.
Giant killer insects. Rats are kind of the main foe in this, but people come to a small town and
they're all Canadian, right? It's very
the town is just overrun by giant animals, and it's very
great
much
place to live.
Small miniature sets and overlapping footage of normal sized rats, and then you just I love that stuff so much. And it's Food of the Gods is a fun one. Food of the Gods 2, which is called Gnaw, Gnaw, not Nah, like nah. Gnaw, Food of the Gods 2 is it has it's giant rats as well, but there's it's the same. It's a chemical that they're obviously that's always the thing. It's chemical that they're making the animals big.
Fucking things up.
And there's a kid that takes it, and it makes them aggressive. And there's a kid that has been injected, and he's like a giant tower, and he's just so aggressive that he's cussing everyone. It's very insane. There's a lot of great forced perspective in part two. There's a sex scene in part two, which has some forced perspective, which is just I have studied that scene, and I cannot figure out how they did it. It's just insane. A lot of the effects in part two are much better than really they should be for it, and it's just again another one of those fun, silly movies.
We've talked about doing this as a review, but what was the impetus for it? Who was in it? There was somebody in it that we were talking about.
In part two?
Yes.
The lead actor was not anybody.
I think it was the lead actress.
Oh, she was also Mary Lou, right?
Right, there we go.
Yeah.
Yes, Mary Lou. Hello, Mary Lou. Prom night too.
Yeah. Let me Nah. Oh, is there a
She
remake?
loved every fucking minute.
Yeah,
of
Lisa
it.
Schra.
There we go.
Yeah, she was.
Yeah.
she
We're
was
gonna
in
have to
part
do
two.
like a tribute to her, man.
Oh, and Paul Kofos?
Nah, fuck it. Mary
Who's
Lou was
also
in it.
oh yeah, we definitely should do.
Mary Lou.
We should just.
Mary Lou and Food of the Gods too. That was like one.
We should do a show where it's just like actor, like talking about our fate, because you have your not quite the final girl.
He doesn't even know that. He doesn't know I have a podcast. He doesn't know the name of my show yet.
I just mentioned it.
Not quite Final Girls.
Yeah.
Everybody.
And that's what I just said. And
You could be one of my not quite Final Girls.
I guess I could. We should do a show about like kind of unappreciated.
Well, yeah, we talked about this.
Actors.
I believe if we go back and look at the first video we ever did, I think
About
we had
Mary
this,
Lou, right?
we had this exact conversation.
Yep. We should do it. But so there you go. There's our top 10 list.
And you know what? Like, if you have others, we know.
And I want to put them down there
Yeah,
in the
and put them
comments.
down there. But I mean, we have it. We had what 22
There's so many
that we came up with,
We could
and
do
like,
part 2 of this for
oh
sure.
god, yeah. And we were like, okay, well, we can't do like shark ones because like everybody's doing Shark Week, and you know, we were doing like lake horror and stuff. Like, we did have some like restraints because otherwise it would just, we would have been at Tried and True Ale House in Greenwood, Indiana for about 12 hours trying to find.
I think we'll revisit this genre with a new.
I think we need to do like
new
we said,
list.
like killer amphibians, killer mammals, killer birds.
Birdemic. There's our top 10 list. Like, comment, subscribe right there at the bottom.
All that shit.
Tell us your thoughts, your ideas, what's some of your favorites. And
don't say Jaws. Yes, we know.
you're allowed to say Jaws.
Okay, but we also know Jaws. Yes.
It is very, very
Right. We're not going for the obvious.
good. Well, as you can tell, I like a lot of schlock. I
Well,
think if you
but
go
we
back
like-
and look at a lot of my list, it's a lot of schlock.
But we like a lot of good movies too. It's just that that's not what we're devoted
How
to.
dare you accuse me of liking a good movie?
Bye, guys.